So let's take a look at phase one, which is reconnaissance. Now, when we hear about reconnaissance, we typically have an image like this, right? Recon. So it's very similar. When it comes to reconnaissance, what we're talking about here is actually looking at a target, trying to figure out who the target is going to be and what they might have to offer. It is a phase that the attacker actually prepares everything else that he's going to do based off the information that he acquires during this phase. Now, this phase is done in two different methods. The first method is referred to as passive, and the other one is referred to as an active reconnaissance. So passive reconnaissance, active reconnaissance. And I love this picture because it sums it up. A passive reconnaissance is where you have no direct interaction with the target, and that would be the equivalent of a sniper's spotter. He has the binoculars, he gathers information, the target has no idea that he's looking at him. The active version of reconnaissance is where you have direct interaction with the target. And trust me, that would be the sniper's role. He will have direct interaction. It's the same thing when it comes to reconning on networks or a target. Typically, this is a phase that we'll go through. We'll be scanning the network, either from an internal perspective or an external perspective. And typically, again, this is done without any type of authorization. Now, normally, passive reconnaissance is not illegal. Let me give you an example of that. If I was to go to the company's webpage and look at their website, maybe go to their job openings, see what kind of positions are available, that's pretty passive. There's nothing wrong with what I just did. Now, reconnaissance is also the phase that is the most time-consuming for the attacker, but it also has a big payoff. Again, he's going to try to learn as much about your company as he can. Now, part of reconnaissance may actually include things like social engineering. If you're not familiar with what social engineering is, we have a whole module coming up on that one, but just give you a quick, brief summary of it. It is the ability to manipulate somebody by almost being a con man, getting people to expose information about themselves that they normally wouldn't expose. Great example for me when it comes to social engineering is I go to Sam's Club. Some of you guys may go to Costco. And if you don't have those, maybe it's just a grocery store. But when I go on the Saturdays, they always have these people out there giving out free samples, right? Like, little pieces of beef jerky or little pieces of burritos. That's totally designed to socially engineer you. First of all, the aspect of social engineering that they're drawing out of you is one based off of emotion or guilt. Here you've got someone who's prepared the food, she's cutting it up, or he or she may be cutting it up, they're serving you, you come over, you're getting something for free, and they want to tell you about it, and they do it really well to me. I'm going to be the first to admit here, my wife makes fun of me all the time because, usually it's some grandma that's telling me all about this particular bacon, and I'm like, the bacon's good. And I will actually grab a pack of the bacon, put it in my cart, walk around the aisle, and find another refrigerated section and put it back. So, social engineering works everywhere. Folks in marketing are typically masters of social engineering, at least if they're any good. Another type of reconnaissance that a attacker might use would be looking up information about you on the internet. For example, they could use the Whois database, or I could actually very quickly and easily do an NS lookup and find out what type of email server that you're using. Dumpster diving is another type of reconnaissance that we can do, and I know that sounds kind of weird, right? You're not looking for food. But getting information such as bank statements, ATM slips, phone numbers. Matter of fact, I always laughed back in the day when you wanted to go get a driver's license or when you wanted to get a new driver's license because you lost your old one. What did they always ask you for ID? Where I live, they'd say, well, bring us a bill with your current address, like your water bill. And I'm like, couldn't anybody just show up with that and say, my name is Dale? Thank heavens now most of our DMV departments now have digital photos of the old license so they can compare and see if you actually look like Dale or if you're trying to gain access to my driver's license. Now, there is nothing illegal about dumpster diving. In fact, back in the early, I want to say it was back in the 90s when the Department of Justice was going after Microsoft for their practices when it came to Internet Explorer. Sun Microsystems actually did some dumpster diving on the Microsoft campus to get information that they then presented, showing that Microsoft had some dealings under the table that weren't necessarily above board, shall we say. Now, from an attacker's point of view, we're a big fan of passive reconnaissance. We're not really big fans of active. And let me give you an example of an active reconnaissance technique. If I was to ping your server, that's pretty active, right? I'm actually reaching out and touching your server. Is there a trail? Possibly. So active reconnaissance is usually only used when the attacker has figured out or is making an assumption that there's a very low probability that the activities or the tasks he's about to do, a ping, an NS lookup, whatever the case may be, whether anybody's looking at that or not. Our script kiddies have this tendency of being a little more active than they should be. They end up using tools that could actually be a little more aggressive than a simple ping. So as an ethical hacker, you have to have the ability to be aware of all of these various reconnaissance techniques and also be able to help implement preventative techniques as different threats arise.